that was called on Asia Wilson.
Yeah, you can see Kelsey Mitchell right there get Wilson.
Imagine this. It's the WNBA playoffs, a win-or-go-home game. On one side, the Las Vegas Aces, a dynasty in the making, led by their newly crowned MVP on their home court. The stage was set for a coronation. But what unfolded was something nobody predicted. A game that would be talked about not for the breathtaking basketball, but for a series of events so controversial, it would lead to accusations of the sport being rigged, a terrifying medical emergency, and a team of underdogs fighting against not one, but two opponents. This is a shocking story of how the Indiana Fever exposed a league-wide crisis. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you will never look at the WNBA the same way again.
To talk about this really quick, one of the moments in the game that showed blatant inconsistency, right? And just showed, hey, y'all be paying attention to what y'all want to pay attention to, all right, in the W.
The first crack in the carefully crafted facade appeared not with a whistle, but with a silence. Indiana Fever star Kelsey Mitchell drove hard to the basket, absorbing clear contact that sent her off balance. The crowd expected a foul call, but none came. The game continued for a moment, but then everything stopped. Mitchell was on the court, and something was terribly, visibly wrong. She wasn't just nursing a twisted ankle, she was paralyzed from the waist down. In her own chilling words, she later described suffering from a sudden and severe episode of rhabdomyolysis, a dangerous condition where muscle tissue breaks down rapidly, releasing a protein into the blood that can cause catastrophic kidney damage. Her muscles had simply stopped functioning. She described a terrifying sense of numbness, a complete disconnect from her lower body for what felt like an eternity, up to 7 seconds of absolute paralysis. In that moment, she panicked, her mind racing to the worst possible conclusions, experiencing what she could only call an out-of-body experience. This was far more than a simple cramp or routine injury. It was a severe medical emergency that required immediate hospitalization and intravenous fluids to prevent long-term damage.
This is a part of what people are tired of, man. Tired of the inconsistencies and the favoritism that y'all show certain teams with certain jerseys on, man. It's crazy.
The image of a player who had been courageously carrying her team's offensive load, now lying completely immobilized on playoff hardwood, was a stark and disturbing contrast to the game's intensity. It raised immediate and uncomfortable questions about players' safety, the extreme physical toll of the season, and whether the environment of the game, where heavy contact was often overlooked, had contributed to a situation where a player's body literally shut down. This moment transcended sports rivalry, becoming a human drama that left everyone in the arena and watching at home holding their breath, wondering if a star athlete was facing a career-threatening or even life-altering health crisis right before their eyes. But to understand why this moment became such a powerful flashpoint, you have to zoom out and see the bigger, much uglier picture. This single game wasn't some bizarre anomaly. It was the inevitable explosion after a full season of simmering tension that had been boiling over for months. The WNBA has never been more popular, with television ratings soaring and new superstars capturing the public's imagination. But beneath the surface of this incredible growth, a deep-seated crisis was brewing, threatening to undermine the league's credibility. Coaches, players, and legions of fans have been raging all season long about one central, glaring issue: the shocking inconsistency and perceived incompetence of the officiating.
How does the body feel at this time of the year, given all that you in particular have gone through and are always on the floor?
I'm a little sore, I'm not gonna lie. It's catching up to me, but we're gonna just keep getting warm, keep going out there, try to forget about the pain a little bit. But that's the part of the year. That's everyone. Everyone's playing with a little bit of bumps and bruises, and again, you just kind of forget about that in playoffs.
The league's own head of referee performance was forced to admit in interviews that many WNBA referees are actually part-time employees, earning a modest fee between $1,500 and $2,500 per game, while also maintaining demanding schedules working college basketball games. This is a stark and telling contrast to the NBA, where referees are full-time, salaried professionals with extensive benefits, dedicated training facilities, and year-round development programs. The system itself, from the ground up, was practically designed for inconsistency. The tipping point came when Minnesota Lynx coach Cheryl Reeve, after a season-ending loss on a controversial no-call, completely lost it. She stormed the court in a fury, and in a moment captured by microphones, described the officiating with an expletive, calling it FING malpractice. The league's response was the harshest discipline ever handed to a playoff coach, a one-game suspension, and a massive $15,000 fine. But the story didn't end there. When other respected coaches like Indiana's Stephanie White and Vegas's own Becky Hammon dared to speak up in support of Reeves' frustration, they were instantly fined $1,000 each, a clear and punitive message from the league office. Stop talking about the problem. Hammon herself had been warning anyone who would listen that the physicality was spiraling out of control, stating bluntly that this level of relentless, unwhistled contact would never be tolerated in the NBA, and that there was a complete absence of freedom of movement for her players. The powder keg was packed, and the fuse was lit. The stage was set for a full-blown disaster, and in the high-stakes pressure cooker of the Fever vs. Aces playoff series, it finally arrived. Now, let's talk about the specific moment that broke the internet and confirmed every fan's worst suspicions about the integrity of the game. With the outcome hanging in the balance, Fever center and defensive stalwart Aaliyah Boston was whistled for her fifth foul. The replay, which instantly went viral, showed it was a controversial, incredibly soft call, so minimal that many analysts and fans alike labeled it a phantom foul, a call on an action that simply didn't exist. This wasn't just a minor tactical blow for Indiana, it was a strategic knockout punch. Boston was Indiana's undisputed defensive anchor, the one player capable of physically matching up with the Aces' dominant posts. With her forced to the bench, the Aces' path to the basket suddenly became a wide-open highway. The reaction from Aces star Io Wilson was telling and added massive fuel to the fire. Footage circulated online appearing to show her on the bench, celebrating and laughing as Boston was disqualified. The digital world went ballistic. Social media platforms were inundated with comments and side-by-side comparisons pointing out the glaring, almost unbelievable free throw disparity. In a key 8-game playoff stretch, Io Wilson had shot a staggering 58 free throws, while Aaliyah Boston, who plays a similarly physical interior game, had shot only 25. This single, questionable call against Boston crystallized the entire season's frustration into one perfect, infuriating snapshot. It wasn't just another missed call in a long game. To thousands of viewers, it felt like undeniable evidence of a double standard, one set of rules for the celebrated MVP and her super team, and another, far stricter set for the underdog Fever. Indiana, already playing without several key players including the highly touted Caitlin Clark, weren't just fighting a basketball battle against the Aces. They were fighting an uphill war against a narrative that seemed predetermined, a story that the league and its partners appeared desperate to tell, regardless of what was actually happening on the court. So, the natural question is, why was the officiating so blatantly and consistently inconsistent? The problem, it turns out, goes much deeper than one bad referee having an off night. It's a deeply rooted, systemic failure. The WNBA, despite its growing popularity, still operates without the sophisticated, technology-driven infrastructure that the NBA takes for granted. Crucially, there is no centralized, off-site replay center where a dedicated team of officials can quickly review angles and communicate with the on-court crew. This means every single review, for every close call, brings a game to a grinding halt as the three referees huddle awkwardly around a small monitor on the scorer's table, under the intense pressure of a screaming crowd. Furthermore, and perhaps most damningly, the league does not publish the last 2-minute reports that have become a standard tool for transparency and accountability in the NBA. These reports, which publicly assess the correctness of every call and non-call in the last 2 minutes of a close game, force a level of honesty that the WNBA seemingly avoids. Without them, controversial calls simply fade from the official record, never to be addressed, leaving fans and players with nothing but simmering resentment. This profound lack of accountability fuels the widespread perception that the WNBA, which has long prided itself on a grittier, more physical brand of basketball than the NBA, has let them play philosophy bleed into outright dangerous and unfair territory. We've seen star players from legends like Diana Taurasi to newcomers like Caitlin Clark absorb brutal, often unpenalized contact on a routine basis. As one prominent article put it, there is little to no sense of star protection in the league. The entire pipeline for referees is also a fundamental problem. For many officials, the WNBA is seen merely as a stepping stone, a resume builder to hopefully reach the NBA, not a final destination worthy of their full passion and commitment. This reality, whether true in every individual case or not, creates a powerful perception that the women's league is simply not their top priority. The entire system, from the economics to the technology to the league's own philosophy, seems almost perfectly designed to create the very chaos and controversy that unfolded in this disastrous playoff game. But here is where the story takes an incredible, inspiring, and utterly shocking turn. Against all conceivable odds, facing an opposing dynasty, the league MVP, a hostile road crowd, and a wave of baffling officiating that seemed designed to break their spirit, the Indiana Fever won. They didn't just win, they flipped the entire script on its head. Kelsey Mitchell, even after a terrifying medical scare, had been the team's catalyst and emotional leader all season long, and her spirit seemed to will the team forward. The team rallied around her absence and the palpable sense of unfairness they faced. They didn't complain, they intensified. They tightened their defensive rotations to perfection, communicated with a ferocity that drowned out the noise, ran their offensive sets with surgical precision, and played with a pure, unadulterated heart that the heavily favored Aces simply could not match. While the Vegas squad unraveled in front of everyone, barking at the referees over every minor contact, forcing ill-advised shots out of frustration, and displaying visible body language of defeat, Indiana remained stoically composed. They proved, in the most dramatic fashion possible, that raw willpower, impeccable teamwork, and unwavering belief could overcome even the most lopsided and hostile circumstances. They weren't just winning a basketball game. They were making a statement that echoed far beyond the arena. The message was clear. You can try to intimidate us. You can try to handicap us with questionable calls. You can throw every obstacle in our path, but we will not be broken. They played literally until wheels fell off, and in doing so, they exposed a fragile core of a supposed dynasty, revealing a team that relied on external advantages rather than an unbreakable internal fortitude. It was a victory for every underdog who has ever been counted out, a testament to the power of resilience, and a night that would forever be etched in WNBA history, not for the controversy, but for the breathtaking triumph of spirit over circumstance. The fallout from this game was immediate, loud, and completely inescapable. The controversy didn't just linger in the background. It exploded across the sports landscape, dominating headlines and talk shows for days, effectively overshadowing the Las Vegas Aces' eventual advancement to the finals. The narrative had been completely hijacked. The conversation was no longer about X's and O's or even about who deserved to win. It was a full-blown public debate about the very integrity of the sport. In the digital age, outrage has a multiplier effect, and this situation was a perfect storm. Clips of the non-call on Mitchell's drive, the phantom foul on Aaliyah Boston, and Aya Wilson's reaction went viral on a loop, each view cementing perception of a league in crisis. Social media platforms became a public tribunal, with fans, journalists, and even players from other teams weighing in with a unified sense of frustration. This wasn't a contained issue, it was a wildfire, and the league's headquarters was directly in its path. The most damning indictment came not from a hot-take artist on television, but from within the players' ranks. Nafisa Collier, a 5-time All-Star and the vice president of the Players Union, delivered a sensational, meticulously crafted 4.5-minute statement that shook the league to its core. She didn't just express disappointment. She launched a direct and professional assault on the system when she stated that the officiating had reached levels of inconsistency that plague our sport and undermine the integrity in which it operates. It was a statement that carried the weight of the entire union. Her use of the word negligence was particularly powerful. It's a legalistic term implying a failure to exercise proper care, an accusation that the league was not just making mistakes, but was actively failing in its duty of care to its athletes and its product. This was the moment the story transformed. It was no longer just a frustrated fan base or a few fine coaches. It was the elected representative of the players, one of the most respected voices in the game, sounding a 5-alarm fire and declaring the situation untenable. The league office, under Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, was suddenly backed into a corner. Their previous strategy of silencing dissent through fines and suspensions now looked not just ineffective, but dangerously counterproductive. It painted a picture of a leadership team more concerned with controlling the message than fixing the problem. Their authority looked fragile, exposed by the very players they govern. They could write as many $1,000 tickets as they wanted, but they couldn't find the truth into silence. The growing consensus, now amplified by a figure of Collier's stature, was undeniable. The product on the court was being compromised by the officials tasked with managing it. This created an impossible bind for the league. To ignore the outcry was to admit they didn't care about the game's integrity, but to publicly agree would be an admission of guilt that could open them up to even more intense scrutiny and potential legal challenges. Their silence in the days that followed was deafening, speaking volumes about their inability to manage a crisis of their own making. This incident also forced an uncomfortable financial and structural conversation. into the mainstream, analysts began openly questioning whether the WNBA's business model was sustainable if it relied on a part-time, underpaid officiating core. How could a league justify skyrocketing franchise valuations and record media deals while the fundamental integrity of the game was being undermined by what many saw as a refusal to invest in proper infrastructure? The controversy became a proxy for a larger debate about the league's growing pains. Were they prioritizing expansion and marketing over the core product? The referees, whether fairly or not, became the symbol of this neglect. The fallout extended to the fans, whose trust was eroding. When fans started to believe the game isn't fair, that the outcome might be influenced by factors beyond the player's control, they disengage. The league wasn't just risking its reputation, it was risking the passionate fan base that had supported it through leaner times. The question hanging over the entire sport was no longer who will win the championship, but can the WNBA survive its own success without fixing the foundations it's built upon? What do you think the league's first move should be? Drop your suggestions in the comments below. So, what does this all mean for the future of the WNBA? This game was a perfect storm, but the terrifying part is that the conditions that created it, the systemic neglect, the part-time officiating, the lack of transparency, still exist, waiting for the next high-stakes moment to trigger another crisis. The league is now standing at the most critical crossroads in its history. On one hand, it's enjoying unprecedented growth, sold-out arenas, landmark media deals, and a new generation of superstars who are household names. On the other hand, it is threatened by a deep and widening crisis of confidence that strikes at the very heart of any sport, the belief that the competition is fair and the best team wins. The trust that took decades to build is now showing cracks, and if left unrepaired, could undermine everything. The path forward is clear, but it requires courage and investment. The first and most obvious step is a massive overhaul of the officiating program. Can the league, which is now valued in the billions, finally invest in a full-time, professionally salaried officiating core? This isn't just about paying referees more. It's about demanding more in return. It's about creating a system where officials are employees of the league, with year-round training, physical conditioning, and film study sessions alongside the players and coaches they work with. This would foster a deeper understanding of the game's nuances and create a culture of continuous improvement, rather than the current model, which feels fragmented and temporary. Furthermore, will the league implement an NBA-style transparency system to rebuild the shattered trust? The last 2-minute report shouldn't be seen as a threat, but as a tool for accountability and education. Publishing these reports would demonstrate a commitment to getting calls right, even if it means admitting mistakes after the fact. It would show the players, coaches, and fans that the league is listening, and that it values the integrity of the outcome over the appearance of infallibility. Or will the league choose a different path? Will it continue to operate as usual, letting controversial whistles and devastating non-whistles define its biggest moments and legacy? The easy choice is to dismiss this as a one-off controversy, to hide behind the exciting storylines of its stars, and hope the public's memory is short. But this would be a catastrophic miscalculation. The Indiana Fever's experience, marred by Kelsey Mitchell's health scare and a barrage of controversial calls, ultimately revealed a truth bigger than a single game's result. It was a microcosm of a larger struggle. It showed that for the WNBA to truly become the global powerhouse it deserves to be, it cannot just be a league of incredible athletes. It must be a league of impeccable standards. The foundation, the rules, their consistent application, and the technology that supports fairness must be as strong as the players who compete within it. The players, from union leaders like Nafisa Collier to veterans like Becky Hammond, are now publicly demanding it. The fans are screaming for it in every comment section and on every social media platform. They are the lifeblood of the sport, and their belief in the product is not a given. It is earned through every fair contest and honest outcome. The league has a golden opportunity to turn this crisis into its defining moment of maturation. It can choose to be a leader in sports integrity, to build a system so robust that it becomes a model for others. The only question left, the one that will echo throughout the next season and beyond, is will the league listen? Will they have the vision to see that true growth isn't just about expanding to new cities, but about strengthening the core of the game itself? The ball is now in the league's court. The world is watching to see if they will fumble it, or they will call a timeout reassess, and finally make the strategic investment that secures a legacy of fairness for generations to come. What do you think the single most important change the WNBA needs to make is? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every one. If you want to stay up to date on the stories that the sports world is talking about, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Thanks for watching.